I always thought volunteering would make me feel like a better person. You know, that warm, fuzzy, look at me, helping humanity kind of glow. What no one tells you is that sometimes volunteering feels less like community service and more like community surveillance. It started with a flyer. Bright yellow, slapped on the notice board of the grocery store, right next to a lost cat poster that had been up so long the cat had probably already reincarnated. Asterisk, neighborhood watch volunteers needed. Protect your community. Keep it safe. Asterisk. I wasn't exactly the joiner type. My free time consisted mostly of Netflix, microwaved burritos, and arguing with strangers online about movies. But the flyer wouldn't stop staring at me while I stood there trying to decide if I could justify buying a family-sized pack of Oreos for one. Besides, it had been a rough couple of months. My boyfriend had dumped me for someone with a better vibe, my boss had started calling me resource flexible, which, I learned, is corporate for expendable, and my neighbor's kid had called me the sad lady with the old dog. I figured, maybe helping out would fix something. Me, the neighborhood, whatever. So I called the number. And that's how I met Carol. Carol was the kind of person who made you feel like you'd accidentally joined a cult. Her smile was too wide, her energy too intense, and she talked in a tone that suggested she either taught kindergarten or trained Navy SEALs. "Oh, honey," she chirped during our first phone call. "We've been waiting for someone like you. Someone reliable. Someone who cares." I didn't feel reliable. Or caring. But I said yes anyway. Our first patrol night was a Tuesday. Carol showed up at my door in a neon vest, holding a clipboard and 2 travel mugs. "For the caffeine," she said, handing me one. "And the confidence." I didn't have the heart to tell her caffeine usually gave me anxiety sweats. The night started off fine. We walked around the block. Carol waved at every house, muttering things like, "They've got a package on the porch, risky," and "That hedge is way too overgrown, perfect place for someone to hide." By the time we reached Maple Street, I was already regretting my life choices. Then we saw him. A man, standing in the middle of the sidewalk, staring up at the second floor of a house. He didn't move. Didn't even blink. Just stared. Carol grabbed my arm. "Do you see that?" "Yes," I whispered. "Unfortunately." "What do we do?" Before I could answer, Carol marched straight toward him. "Excuse me, sir," she called, voice sharp like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. "Can we help you with something?" The man didn't respond. He didn't even look at us. Just kept staring up at that dark window. I tugged at Carol's sleeve. "Maybe he's meditating? Practicing his balance? Astral projecting?" Then the man finally spoke. "She's not safe in there," he said. His voice was flat. Cold. Like he was just stating a fact. Carol tightened her grip on her clipboard. "Who isn't safe?" "The girl," he said, still staring at the window. "She doesn't know it yet. But she will." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Carol, for once, didn't have a comeback. Then, as abruptly as he appeared, the man turned and walked away. No explanation. No glance back. Just disappeared into the dark. I wanted to follow him. Carol wanted to call the police. We compromised by standing there awkwardly until the motion light on the house flicked on, and a sleepy-looking teenager peeked through the blinds. "What are you doing on my lawn?" she asked, clearly unimpressed. Carol pasted on her most reassuring smile. "Sweetheart, just checking in. Everything okay in there?" The girl blinked. "Yeah? Why wouldn't it be?" I didn't have an answer for that. By the time we got back to my house, Carol was already spinning conspiracy theories about the man, local creep, ex-boyfriend, potential psychic. Me? I just wanted to lock my doors and pretend I'd never left my couch. But the next morning, there was a note taped to my front door. Just one line, written in sharp, messy letters. Asterisk, "You saw him. Don't ignore this." Asterisk. I stared at the note so long my coffee went cold. It wasn't like in the movies, no ominous background music, no dramatic zoom in, just me, barefoot in an old hoodie, holding a piece of paper that made my stomach twist. The handwriting was jagged, like whoever wrote it was either furious or in a hurry. Maybe both. And the words, asterisk, "You saw him. Don't ignore this, asterisk." Who even leaves cryptic notes anymore? What happened to just sending a passive-aggressive text? I considered a dozen rational explanations, a prank, a bored teenager, Carol being Carol. But the thing that stuck in my brain, like a splinter, was that man's voice from the night before. "She's not safe in there." I shoved the note in my junk drawer, because apparently, that's where I put potential evidence, and went to work, trying to convince myself it was nothing. By the time I got home that evening, Carol was sitting on my porch. In her vest. With a thermos. "We need to talk," she said, like a detective in a bad cop show. "Oh no," I muttered. "What now?" She shoved her phone in my face. It was a blurry photo of the man from last night, standing at a bus stop. Where did you get this? I asked. Carol grinned, proud of herself. Neighborhood group chat. Someone saw him by the park this morning. They said he was watching the swings. Watching the swings, I repeated. Like, in a creepy way or a nostalgic, wistful way? Does it matter? He's lurking. And now this. She held up an identical note to the one I found that morning. Same handwriting. Same message. You saw him. Don't ignore this. Suddenly, my junk drawer theory didn't seem so convincing. That night, sleep was impossible. Every creak of the house sounded suspicious. Every shadow outside my window looked like someone standing there, watching. At around 2 a.m., I gave up and turned on the TV, hoping a rerun of some mindless cooking show would drown out my paranoia. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Asterisk, she's in danger. 14 Maple. Midnight tomorrow. Asterisk. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. 14 Maple was the same house from the night before, the one with the teenager in the window. I wanted to call Carol. I wanted to call the police. Hell, I wanted to call my mom. But all I did was sit there, staring at my phone until the screen dimmed. The next day, I told myself I wasn't going. That it wasn't my problem. That this was clearly some elaborate prank or maybe even a scam, though what exactly they'd scam me out of, I didn't know. But at 11:45 p.m., I found myself standing in front of 14 Maple, hidden behind a tree like some wannabe spy. The house was dark. Quiet. For 10 long minutes, nothing happened. Then I saw movement in the upstairs window. The girl, the teenager from the other night, pacing her room, phone pressed to her ear. And then, a shadow. Behind her. I blinked, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no, there was definitely someone in that room with her. I stepped out from behind the tree, ready to, I don't know, yell? Call 911? Throw a rock through the window? Before I could do anything, the lights in the house went out. All of them. And then I heard it. A scream. I sprinted toward the front door, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might black out. The door was locked. I banged on it, shouting, but there was no answer. Then, as suddenly as the lights had gone out, they flickered back on. The girl stood in the doorway, wide-eyed, shaking. What happened? I gasped. Are you okay? Who was in there with you? She stared at me, confused. What are you talking about? I was on the phone. The lights went out for a second, that's it. No, I said, breathless. I saw someone. In your room. There was no one here, she said, her voice flat, guarded. I wanted to argue, to insist. But something in her eyes, a mix of fear and warning, made me stop. Okay, I said finally, stepping back. Okay. Just, be careful, alright? She nodded once and shut the door. And there, taped to the front step, was another note. Asterisk, too late. Asterisk. I stood there frozen on the porch, the note crumpled in my fist. Too late. The night was silent, heavy, like even the crickets had decided to mind their own business. I wanted to tell myself it was some sick joke, some kid trying to freak out the nosy neighbor, but deep down, my gut screamed otherwise. I walked home in a daze. Carol's porch light was still on, but for once, I didn't want to hear her theories. I didn't want to hear anything. That night, I didn't sleep. Not even a minute. The next morning, the neighborhood buzzed with gossip. Police at 14 Maple. An ambulance around 6 a.m. Something about the daughter. By the time I got to the end of the block, Carol was already in full briefing mode, waving her arms like she was directing traffic. She's gone, she whispered, eyes wide. The girl. They say she ran away, but that's not what it looks like. I heard someone saw blood in the kitchen. I felt my stomach turn. The note. The scream. The shadow in the window. And now, gone. The police knocked on my door that afternoon. A polite officer with tired eyes. We're just talking to neighbors, he said, holding a notepad. Did you see or hear anything unusual last night? I hesitated. How could I explain? Oh, sure, officer, I was just hiding behind a tree like a lunatic because a stranger texted me about danger at that house. No, I said finally. Nothing unusual. The officer nodded, thanked me, and left. And I hated myself for lying. That night, another note appeared. Slipped under my door this time. Asterisk, you can still fix this. Midnight. The park. Asterisk. I told myself not to go. That I was in over my head. That I was just a volunteer with too much time on my hands, not some detective in a thriller novel. But by 11:50, I was walking to the park. The swings creaked softly in the breeze. The slide glistened under the streetlight. Empty. Quiet. And then, footsteps. The man stepped out from the shadows, his face finally visible. He was older, maybe late 50s, with a scar along his jaw and eyes that looked like they hadn't rested in years. "You shouldn't have lied to them," he said, his voice low, rough. I swallowed hard. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" "I wanted your help," he said. "I thought maybe you'd see it. But you didn't. And now she's gone." "She ran away," I said, though my voice shook. "No," he said, shaking his head. "They took her. Just like the others." "The others?" I whispered. He looked past me, scanning the trees like someone might be listening. "You don't understand. This place, this neighborhood, it's not what it looks like. People disappear. Kids, mostly. And they cover it up. Make it look like runaways, or accidents. But it's them." I wanted to laugh, to tell him he was insane. But the fear in his eyes wasn't fake. "Who's them?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he handed me a small envelope. "Midnight tomorrow," he said. "If you want to stop this, be at the old greenhouse. Don't tell anyone. Don't call the cops. They're in on it." Before I could say another word, he disappeared into the trees, leaving me alone in the park, clutching an envelope that felt heavier than it should have. Inside the envelope was a photo. Grainy, black and white, like it had been taken from a security camera. The girl from 14 Maple. Sitting in the back of a van. Her face bruised. Her eyes terrified. And behind her, a man I recognized. Not from around the neighborhood. Not from work. Not even from the endless true crime podcasts I'd been binging for months. But from the volunteer center. One of us. By the time I looked up from the photo, I knew two things. 1, my quiet little neighborhood was hiding something far worse than petty gossip. 2, I wasn't going to be a bystander anymore. I folded the photo back into the envelope and shoved it into my jacket. "Midnight tomorrow," I whispered to myself. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. Or at least, I thought I was.